Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bound. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
Good evening and welcome to the Friday night edition of Spaced Out Radio Tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you very much for tuning us in, as we're going to have a great night of radio tonight. David Palachik and Chad Wanless are going to join us, talk about UFO technology. What are they flying? How can we find them through tech? We're going to get into that. It's going to be great tonight. You guys are going to enjoy it. It's going to be a show that flies on by, pun intended. Excuse me. Little frog in my throat there. I apologize. So let's get right to roll call so we can get this thing going. We got Race Fan in the gold medal position, Kitty Caddywhack with a silver, Fast Hemi with a bronze medal tonight. The rest of you, let's say hello. We got Robert Lamont, T-Bone, my man, Eternity Eternal, and Chris 716. How y'all doing? Tim Mothman and his goatee, Paramarv, Luscious Jewels, Necessary Dialogue. Thank you all for coming on in. Hi in the studio, and just another guy named Harry. Good to see you. Frankie B, Carol Amario, Val SWPA. Welcome back to the show. Val will be signing autographs after the show. Line up to the left of the studio, if you don't mind, to the left of the studio. All right, continuing on with our roll call. We got Mel WD40 lubing us up for tonight's show, because when you're talking ET and UFO tech, you always want to go into a show nice and smooth. Yeah, they don't like that rigidness. No, they don't. So we're going to lube it on up for tonight. Cielo, how are you? Thomas Rock, Kurt M, Road Flare. What in Tarnation is here? What in Tarnation will be signing autographs after the show as well. Line up to the right of the studio, if you don't mind, to the right of the studio. Number 4 in your program tonight, starting on defense from Stockholm, Sweden, Lars Jansson. How are you? Stone Hobbit, it's been a while. Good to see you. Matthew Goodka, J True Seeker. Good to see you all. Hello, beautiful Amanda. How are you? I'm Hardcore over on X. Nice to have you here. Walter Kotubinski, good to see you. As we continue on with roll call. Hi, Pam Harris, Lenda, and Creepypasta. Good to see you all here. Moving on down, let's say hello to Cosmic Joe and the lovely Deanna Ann. Nice to have you here. Marty Burback, you're looking lovely as well, so make sure you give yourself a bow. You deserve it. Phineas on X, nice to see you tonight. Doug Shelby is here. The Doug Shelby has arrived, which means we can officially start this show. Fast Hemi, how are you? Stephanie Kenny Blankenship, nice to see you. As we continue on with our roll call, scrolling on down. Up next for us is Al Garay over on Twitch. Ran 14 miles on the treadmill to warm up for tonight. Did it in 11 minutes. The guy was cruising. Scrolling on down, let's say hello to Alien Critter and Alan Marcus. Welcome to SOR Chat. How you doing? Good to have you here for the first time. Deadfish, nice to see you. Kitty Caddywhack, thanks for coming on in. Hi there, Tracy Benna and JMJ12. Digger Dog, nice to have you here as we continue on. And where are we here? Scrolling on down. Even more scrolling. And Colin Collins, how you doing? Good to have you here again. Area 53, thank you very much for kicking off the super chat tonight. Really appreciate your love and support of Spaced Out Radio. The super chat is a wonderful way to support what we do on a nightly basis. So thank you very, very much. Parasolo, how are you? Good to see you again. And Plant Watering Citizen, thanks for coming on in. Candy, how are you? Thanks for joining us as we continue on with our roll call here. Mel WD40, thank you for that awesome super chat. Greatly appreciate it, Mel, for the lube chat right there. Kimberly Burgess, how are you, my dear? Let's get the radio side going. Hello and welcome to the radio and podcast side of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. We have Dave Palachik and Chad Wanless joining us to talk about UFO technology. It's going to be an interesting show indeed. We are on roll call right now on our YouTube side. Trebor, how are you? How are you doing? Thanks for coming on in. Scrolling on down, we have next Deb N. Welcome to SOR Chat. We are caught up as we speak. Reminder to all of you, the super chat is open and you can shop at our Spaced Out Radio store. Why? We do not have ugly swag, people. No ugly swag. You can wear our stuff out in public and be proud of it. Cal123, how you doing? Everybody else, throw those horns up. Let's rock.
Brother has taken control. Every hole is predators condemn your soul. Watching you and watching me. We're all connected but separated. Misunderstood and so frustrated. A million armies of one have invaded. Watching you and watching me. We live behind glass curtains and act like nothing is wrong. Soon you will be long.
Instagram, Spaced Out Radio Show, and on
I know you're out there somewhere.
We're getting into tech, technology, Critters of the Sky. Dave Palachik and Chad Wanless are going to join us here momentarily. Then in hour number 3, Swamp Dweller will kick things off. Then Extra Small Lee Strauss will come in for the Q&A. We're going to have a great show. I'm excited about it. I hope you guys are too. Let's start things off tonight. Dave Palachik is a professor and the co-author of Hidden in Plain Sight, Evidence of Exotic UFO Propulsion. He brings over 4 years of experience, or 4 decades of experience, as a senior electrical and electronic engineering technologist. His career spans from IBM Canada to academia and advanced electronic security systems design, with specialization in infrared imaging technology. A veteran of MUFON Canada, he has held leadership roles in national investigations and now guides CSSAA or CSSAA's global research initiatives. Joining Dave is Chad Wanless, who is an engineering technologist, the author as well of Hidden in Plain Sight, Evidence of Exotic UFO Propulsion, and the soon-released book, Missing Time 2, An Ordinary Man's Extraordinary Journey. Chad's education studies include Emily Carr University of Art and Design and the British Columbia Institute of Technology. Hey, I'm a BCIT grad. Chad, we're winning here, my friend. We are winning. I love it. So we're going to get into this right now because that just spurred me on there. Couple of BCIT grads. I think we were the only technological school in Canada that didn't have a hockey team, but that's okay.
Oh, you guys.
Chad?
Hi.
Where were you on campus at BCIT?
It was one of the north buildings. I don't remember exactly. It was 30 years ago. I don't remember which building it was in.
Oh, you were there just before me then, because I was in the journalism building on the southeast side. So it was all good. Dave Palachik, it's good to have you on Spaced Out Radio again. Thank you for joining us. How you been, my friend?
Good, bad, indifferent. Kind of went through a little health issue a little while ago. Finally had an operation to save my life, and now I'm on the mend and coming back alive.
Good. Alive is good.
Yeah, I think
Alive
so.
is, yeah, it's really good. Well, we're glad to hear you doing this, man, and I'm so happy you're still back in the UFO field, because Dave and I actually met at the Alien Cosmic Expo in Toronto in 2019, and I was an invitee there, and Dave and I just really seemed to click and hit it off, and had a lot of the same perspectives of what is going on, and I've always appreciated that about you, Dave.
Yeah, I enjoyed the meeting, and we kept moving closer together, and ended up on your podcast a few times, I think. And yeah, it's been great. That's when I was the national director of MUFON, and as you know now, I'm national director emeritus. So I've stepped down to pursue other interests, and one, to get better, which is now 80-90% recovered. So that's pretty good. And yeah, you mentioned CSSAA, CSSAA, and that's my passion right now, and still doing investigations when I can for MUFON.
I want to ask you, in regards to the UFO story up here in Canada, we saw prior to the federal election that UFOs were starting to become a bit of a topic. Larry Maguire, the retired member of parliament for Brandon Souris in Manitoba, really led the charge starting in 2021, bringing this to light. We're still the longest interview he's ever done on this topic right here on Spaced Out Radio. You could go in our archives and check that out for free, because it was absolutely amazing. I'm going to ask you, Dave, what do you think the chances are of the Sky Canada report actually coming out, considering everything that's gone on politically?
Well, I have a little bad history with them right now. I reached out to them when I was the national director of MUFON Canada to offer our research, our assistance, whatever we could do for them, because they were saying they're looking for cases. They're looking for actual realistic information. Cold shoulder. I tried a number of times. They would not come back and talk to me whatsoever. Now, will that report ever come out? How late is it now? Year? No, I'm not too sure if we're ever going to see anything. There's no drive for it anymore. If they had funding, it's probably dried up. I have no idea. And we lost our champion, Mr. Maguire. Like, when he decided not to rerun and to retire, it's like, we got to find somebody new. And of course, the bill, or sorry, the petition to bring UAP disclosure to the Canadian public, with the request for the reading on the floor, that died with the election call. So that's dead too. That was somebody out in Vancouver, I believe, or BC somewhere. Brian, maybe it was Manitoba. It died. So like, we got to find a new champion. And Chad actually has a name, and we're going to send them a book, if we haven't already done. Hey, Chad, and see if they'll read it. And who is that, Chad? You found out?
I don't remember the lady's name, but I did find she was with the University of Ottawa. I believe it was. So I'll be mailing it to her directly.
So hopefully we can get a new champion in the house for us.
Yeah, you know what? I think this is a little bit of a shift, because, I mean, the way the Canadian election turned out, it was supposed to be a landslide for the Conservative Party. Ended up not being that whatsoever, and the Liberal Party gets back in. But the Conservatives were really starting to push for the UFO
that
story.
Also died. Yep, that also died, unfortunate.
And I, talking to my insiders in Ottawa, it was something that they were keen on. Mm-hmm. They were keen about getting this going. And Dave, I don't even know if you know, but I'm the one who started the chatter between members of the Pentagon and Larry Maguire. I'm the one who set that up. And
I had heard about that, yes. So I'm glad you told me that officially now. Thank you.
Not a problem. And to see that all those great conversations go to waste, I mean, it seems a little fortuitous now, don't you think?
Yeah, and how many times did Victor Vigiani get in? You know who that is. Get involved and you know he's been championing all this, and of course now he's heading up the Canadian the Coalition for Disclosure, the Citizens Coalition for Disclosure. He's got another name for it in Canada. He's paralleling the U.S. one. He was very disappointed when he found out we lost our champion in the House. It was terrible. So yeah, it's time to start it all over again. I hate to say it, but I think we know what we're doing. So I think we'll be successful.
But isn't that part of the whole UFO mystique? We're always able to get so far until we fall off the rails, and then we got to go back to the beginning and restart again.
Yeah, it's like the world's been restarted 5 times, I think now, and that's a theory. And I think we've restarted this at least 50 times, one for every year since since Roswell, when it became more public.
Yeah, I find it a little bit amazing on how that is happening. I mean, I find it very, very, how can I put it? Frustrating. You know,
Yeah.
Not to get too much into politics, but it was funny because our riding was split during the election. It changed.
Oh.
And the gentleman who was my member of parliament, a lawyer, and his name is escaping me right now. Prior to the 2021 election, he actually stopped by my work, my daytime job. And I pulled him to the side and I said, "What do you know about UFOs?" And he kind of gives me a laugh. I said, "I'm being serious here. What do you know about UFOs?" And he kind of played, "Well, not too much. I haven't really studied up on it." And I told him, I said, "I'm the guy who led Larry Maguire to have a very long, interesting conversation with members of the Pentagon regarding this subject. And Larry Maguire, Raquel Dancho, and others are very much interested in the Canadian perspective of this topic." He goes, "Interesting." I said, "You got my vote, but you need to learn about this stuff." I called that moron and emailed him in his constituency office and in Ottawa 9 times because he was the shadow minister for defense. And he never returned my call or email.
That's what I feel like Sky Canada. We reached out to give them all the help and all the assistance they wanted under their mandate and not to push anything else. They didn't take us up on it.
So I'm going to ask you one final question on this before we move on. Why do you think the Canadian government has this stance, and they've had it for decades, at least all my life, where if we don't talk about it, it doesn't exist?
Well, this years ago, the Toronto Star approached the Department of National Defense and asked what their stance was on it. And they sent a stupid cartoon, sent the X-Files poster and says, "What UFOs?" Like, they got shafted for that one, by the way. But it's, and I'll say it publicly, I've been saying it all my life. We're a puppet of the U.S. government. We don't move unless they say jump. You know, we don't do anything. And I think it's time now to stand on our own 2 feet, like we are doing, like we are uniting the country because of what our Orange Glow ex-friend in the States has done. You know, I'm not going to get into politics. I'm not going to call bad names, but I'm not thrilled what he's doing to the world. And why don't we stand on our own and not wait for the States? Why don't we have disclosure? Why don't we talk about the UFOs we have hidden away? Can't talk anymore about that.
Well, Manitoba is the hotspot.
I am well aware all the hotspots are. And Chad lives in one too, by the way, and he's going to talk about that. I know he is. You know, 15 years with MUFON, getting into the meat and potatoes of 500 cases every single year. I've seen with CSSAA, I have seen dozens of UFOs personally. So I know what's going on. But I also have to remind you, I have an NDA, so I can only go so far. I'll get to a point. If you ask me the question, I'll say that pat answer. I can neither confirm nor deny that question.
Is your NDA with a government, business, or MUFON Canada?
Can I say all 3? I have multiple ones. I also have top secret NATO clearance. So that says it all. Okay.
Not a problem.
But we can
Chad,
talk
I
about
want to
everything
ask
else we
you.
came for. Go ahead. Sorry, Chad.
Chad, I want to ask you, what's your UFO story?
Oh, I'm an experiencer. And I knew growing up I'd seen UFOs on a few occasions, and I didn't make much sense of it. I was like, well, yeah, I saw a Saturn-shaped UFO when I was 5 or 6, and at the time I thought it was the planet Saturn in the sky. I was heading to bed, and I looked out the window, and there's this orange glowing bulbous object with this red ring around it. And I thought, oh, it's Saturn. Interesting. Okay. So I headed into my bedroom and got up on the bed, took another look. And this time it was floating in front of the ocean in Howe Sound. And I was thinking, I must be seeing Saturn's reflection off the ocean. I laid back down. I sat up again. I took another look. And this time it was floating in front of the mountain on the other side of the inlet. And I thought, how am I seeing Saturn through the mountain? And that was it. That was the end of the memory. That was always a conscious memory, but it just came to an abrupt end. I assumed that maybe I'd laid down to sleep or something. And then we had seen a large V-shaped row of lights coming over Lions Bay, coming towards our house, and it dipped down and it went. My house was on a rocky outcrop on the side of the mountain. And so it was below us, and we looked down, and most of my family was there, and we were all like, what is that? What's that? I was the one who spotted it first. And then as it went across, I guess one of the street lights lit it up just enough that it looked like a wing. And my uncle, who's a private pilot, says, oh, there you go. It must be an airplane or something. But, as Dave, Lions Bay is on the side of a mountain, in the middle of a forest, in the middle of a fjord inlet, on the opposite side of the mountains from Vancouver. There should be no way any kind of jet aircraft would be buzzing a mountainside village in the middle of the night, let alone during the daytime. And it always stuck with me that seemed odd. And then when I was 18, I had seen something hanging out of a cloud. My sister was sick, so Mom asked me to go deliver the newspapers for her because she had this newspaper route. And I'm like, okay. So I went and delivered the newspaper. And just as I was done, it was 5:30. Something caught my eye. There was something up in the sky in the clouds, and I looked up, and it darted back up into the clouds. And I thought, well, that was weird. And the next thing I know, I'm standing in front of our townhouse in Burnaby there, and it's pitch black, and there's a yellow light coming from the kitchen window, and I didn't think much of it, and thought, oh, sun must have gone down quicker than I thought or something. Go in, open up the door, and my mom's like, where have you been? You should have been home hours ago. I'm like, what are you talking about? She's like, it's 8:30. I'm like, 8:30? It was 5:30 like 2 minutes ago. But I was still in high school. Missing time was not something that was taught in high school. It wasn't something that was that was 1990, so it wasn't something anyone knew of. And I remember talking to my best friends, and they were like, "Well, I don't know. It was interesting. I'd seen something hanging out of the clouds, but we didn't know what it was." And a year later, I was watching a television show, and the show had large green aliens with large black eyes, the typical grays, but green skin. And it terrified the hell out of me. And I didn't know why. And it drove me to go to a bookstore. And I went through the books, found a picture of, there was one book with a photograph of a sculpture, a bust of a gray alien. It terrified me. I had to slam the book shut. I couldn't look at it. And then I found the book Missing Time by Bud Hopkins. And I thought, okay, this one seems the most reasonable out of all of them. Started reading it. And as I went through it, to my horror, I think it was chapter 5, this guy is talking about driving along at night. It's 2:30 in the morning, and then all of a sudden it's bright as day. And I remembered an event that happened to me when I was 8 years old. I remember waking up. My best friend was sleeping over the time. It was absolutely bright, bright day, like day. We go upstairs. We turn the TV on because it's Saturday morning. We thought, oh, we've slept in. We're going to miss the cartoons. So we turn the television on, and we get this off-air signal, and it says it's 2:30 in the morning. And we're like, well, that's really weird. How is it as bright as day, but it's 2:30 in the morning? Didn't think much of it. My friend's like, well, we better go brush our teeth. And because he's the son of a dentist. And I'm like, okay. So you go into the bathroom, and that window is pitch black. I'm like, why is every other window bright and this one's black? So we brush our teeth, we come back out. Every window is pitch black, but the TV's still on. I thought, well, we got to go turn the TV off before we go to bed. So I go to turn it off, and the off-air signal now says it's 5:30 in the morning. And when I remembered this memory being triggered by the events in the book, I was shocked. I was dumbfounded. I was in full ontological shock, as the saying goes. And I put the book down. I couldn't read it anymore. And for the next 2 weeks, I kept thinking to myself, it had to have been my friend. It couldn't have been me. It had to have been my friend. It couldn't have been me. Back and forth. And then 2 weeks later, I had the courage to pick up the book, and I started reading. And the next chapter, it was a lady talking about when she was a child, and she was asked to go she was on a farm, asked to go do some chores. She goes out, she's in the chicken coop, and then instantly she's standing outside, bewildered about how did she get from the chicken coop to the middle of the farm. And she's got a cut on, I think it was on her abdomen, and it was like a perfect scalpel cut, an inch wide, deep, another half inch deep, something like that. And then I remembered one of my own events when I was walking home from school from a special event. And I was following these two kids that were, they had a bag of candy and they were sharing, and I was hoping they were going to share it with me. And they didn't. They started bugging, teasing me because they were the bullies. And so I ran down the road, and then they just kind of disappeared. And I thought, that's weird. And then my ankle was wet. And I looked down, and my sock was discolored. So I pulled down my sock, and there was this perfect scalpel cut on the front of my ankle, half-inch wide, half-inch deep. I could see through the skin, there was a layer of fat under the skin. I could see through the muscle, and I could see cartilage at the bottom of the cut. It was that deep. And that memory came back from that second chapter, and I realized it was me. It wasn't my friend. And then I was in absolute, I wouldn't say hysterics, but I was absolute shock. And that started my process of trying to come to grips with what had happened to me. And it was a decades-long self-healing journey to try and come to terms with what this otherworldly presence in my life, that the hints were always there, but I didn't know what it was until that book unlocked all the hints and let me know what they meant.
Oh, my.
Yeah.
That's terrifying, man. Absolutely terrifying. We got about a minute to go here before we need to go to break. When it started to click in what happened, Chad, how did you feel about that?
It was like everything you've been told in your life was a lie. And everything everyone else thought about that subject, they were deluded. They were absolutely deluded. They were fooling themselves, thinking, "Oh, it can't possibly be," because they're protecting their worldview, but they're deluded. That was my thought, and to this day, I feel that people who are absolutely against the topic are just in some level of ontological shock, whether they realize it or not. They're trying to keep.
Gentlemen, hold right there, because we are going to go to break at the bottom of the hour. Dave Palachik, Chad Wanless, they're here to talk about UFO technology. Coming up here on the Mighty SOR. All right, gentlemen, we are clear. And we got about 5 minutes here. Good start, Chad.
Thank you.
Great story there. It's funny when you said what you said at the end there about people were just the people you know around you were just deluded. I had that when I can tell you the date, April 15th, 2014. I had that same thought after having an encounter with an alien at 2:00 in the afternoon in a forest. And I remember thinking that exact same thing. No, that the rule book of life had just been tossed out the window.
Yep, that's exactly it. The rule book of life is garbage. It's gone. It's nonsense.
Yep, amen to that.
Yeah, interesting. He's had quite a few experiences. I've listened to them all and understood a lot and learned a lot from Chad. And he's also we met through MUFON Canada when he joined MUFON Canada, and I was training all the new FIs as a national chief investigator. And after I learned more about Chad, I asked him to be our ERT, which is the Experiencer Research or Resource Team Manager. He just had a way of talking to people who are trying to express what they went through. So that's how we met. So we've known each other for a little bit more than 10 years now.
Yeah.
So,
I found when I do my presentations and my book, the second one, Missing Time 2, it's an illustrated book. And I did all the work in CGI, and then I applied an art filter to it to give it a little bit of an artistic flair. And when I present, people come up to me afterwards and they say, you know, I've never told a soul, but this is what I saw, or this is what I experienced. And sometimes it's as simple as they've seen a UFO, and sometimes it's a lot more. And so I've been privileged by many people's disclosures, people who I know personally in everyday life, as well as people that I've met through the conferences I've gone to. And it's amazing the level of fear that people have, and they bottle this up inside them, and they can't tell a soul, they can't tell anyone. And then I come along and I say, this has been happening to me, this is what I saw here, these images I've created, this is exactly what I saw and how I saw it. And then they're in absolute shock because it's what they saw, or something very similar. And it opens them up, and it's been very humbling to have that happen.
Yeah.
And,
Dave, are we ever? Sorry to cut you off.
No.
Dave, are we ever going to see another ACE conference?
Unfortunately, things have become difficult. You know, I ran it for 5 years with Stu Buddy and Sue Collins, and the first one was in 2017 in Brantford. 2016, 2017. We moved it to Toronto. No, it goes way back further than that. What am I thinking? Like Toronto, when it ended in 2019 because of COVID, that was number 6. So the problem is, to put it on now, you have to literally drop $150,000 down with the hotel. So unless we get a big sponsor, I mean, you know, we've always had great names there. Richard Dolan, Nick Pope, Travis Walton. I've met so many people because of ACE and because of my affiliation with MUFON Canada. But unless somebody wants to drop $150,000 down as a deposit, it's nobody's wanting to come up with that money. Like somebody wants to run it and wants to fund it, and I'll stop working full time to put it on. I loved it. I love doing it. Well, like you said, that's where you and I met.
Good event.
Yeah, I presented at one of them too.
Yeah, we had Chad present, but it's the only one that was full scale. You know, 3 days long. You know, 1,500 people a day coming through. It was impressive. So.
Yeah, I think there was about 450 people in there when I was speaking.
Yeah, you were on the Friday night? No.
No, Saturday.
Saturday night. Yeah, 450 people in the room.
Yeah.
But we had other side things going on. But the main speech, yes.
Yeah.
The biggest
That was
night we had was,
fantastic.
we had 1,500 for Travis Walton.
Hold that, my friend. Hold
Yep.
that thought. Thank you, Area 53, Mel, Creepypasta, Richard, Adam, T-Bone, and Lavira for the super chats. Here we go, everybody. Power down is now underway. My name is Dave Dunn. We appreciate you tuning us in for your night of weirdness. Thank you for joining us. Hey, I want to remind all of you that if you missed portions of this show or others, our archives are always free on YouTube or any major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. Here we go. Our good friend Dave Palachik, his good friend Chad Wanless. We're going to talk about their latest book, Hidden in Plain Sight, Evidence of Exotic UFO Propulsion. It can be found on Amazon as we speak. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us. And Dave, we're going to start talking about the importance of UFO technology, because really there's two sides to this argument or this research. There's the UFO side, then there's the human side of it all. Where do you want to start?
Let's just dive in and see where we go. Let's put it that way. But before we do, I mean, Chad has talked about his new book. It's coming out. It's not out yet, and it'll be coming out sometime this year later. So Hidden Time 2. And by the way, I've read it a number of times. You got to get it. It's amazing. You know, his experience is incredible. So that's a little plug for the book. That's to come. So Hidden in Plain Sight, we decided to use that title to start with because nobody's looking for it. And it's right there in front of your eyes. And it was Chad who opened my eyes to it. And before we get into it, Chad, tell a little story about how we ended up doing this.
Okay. So I was watching a podcast called The Angry Astronaut. He's an interesting fellow, a guy named Jordan. And most of his podcasts are about astronomy and rocket launches and things like that. But he does a side, every once in a while, he'll do one on UFOs. And so I was watching this particular one, and there was a Saturn-shaped UFO flying somewheres over Colombia, and it was captured on a cell phone video by a passenger in an airliner. And the podcast was playing in slow motion. And I was watching it, and I noticed that the background clouds were moving. Not your typical moving in the wind, but they were abruptly changing and returning to where they were during this slow motion of this Saturn-shaped object moving. And I phoned up Dave and I said, you got to watch this video. Like, look at the background clouds. Don't look at the UFO. Look at the background clouds. And you'll notice that these background clouds are moving on a frame-by-frame basis. And both Dave and I have some video analytic software, and we put it through it, watched it at a frame-by-frame basis. And sure enough, what I noticed and what Dave noticed was that the background clouds would move in one frame, they'd return to normal in the second frame, and then the third frame they'd move again. And there's this oscillating pattern of rapid movement of the background objects. And I said to Dave, that looks like gravitational lensing. And Dave, you tell what your part of this.
Yeah, when I looked at it, Chad called me up. I said, what's he finding now? You know, this is okay. I looked at it and went like, oh my God, this is an aha moment. That's the only way to explain it. And I called him right back. I said, you are absolutely right. How did you catch this? First of all, it was probably the first UAP video we've seen that somebody taking the time to slow it down. And so we got the original one and we slowed it down to each individual frames. As Chad says, we both have really good forensic software. And I called him, and when I said this is an aha moment, I said, you got to investigate. We got to we got to publicize. We got to talk about this. And Chad went, okay, I'll start doing some research. And, I start helping him do stuff and all that. But the next thing you know, I'm looking at what he's producing and I'm going, Chad, you've gone into this like unbelievable, the math, the association, and his association with warp technology. And we're going to call it that because we have no other name for it. And he'll explain a bit more about that. And it was that eureka aha moment. And we had to get it out to the world. And there's more to it than that. We're not the only ones who discover it. I think we're the only ones who published it the way we did it. So
yeah, the way we did it was the only ones. The first person to notice gravitational lensing in a UAP was actually Kenneth Knuth, and he dedicated 1 or 2 pages in a 2021 presentation where he was talking about the Aguadilla UAP. And then there is another website out there that also talks about the Aguadilla, but I was unaware of those 2 website hits. And so I went ahead and started doing the research, and I found a number of videos. I looked at the Aguadilla video, and sure enough, I was seeing gravitational lensing happening as it was passing in front of linear objects. And then I reached out to MUFON, into the MUFON journal, and I said, we've identified these gravitational lensing events. Would it be acceptable if I wrote up a paper to publish in the MUFON journal? And their response was an enthusiastic yes. I got a phone call back by the lady who leads it. And so I went ahead and started writing this up. And I wrote up, I can't remember how many pages it was, but basically we had to break it up due to space limitations. And so it was originally supposed to be a 3-part series. So the first part was, what is gravitational lensing? Now, for the viewers who don't know, Einstein's theory of relativity was proven via gravitational lensing. In the year 1919, an astronomer went out to the South Pacific and he took a photograph during a lunar eclipse. Einstein said that the gravity of the sun should bend light from stars on the other side back around towards the Earth, making these stars appear farther away from the sun than they should be. And that's exactly what the photograph proved, was that light was being bent by gravity. And the next time, and this is really important to remember, the next time a photograph was taken showing gravitational lensing was in, I believe, 1978, and it was the first quasar photographed in an Einstein ring. And then it wasn't until the Hubble telescope came out that we started actually finding large numbers of these gravitational rings and Einstein rings and Einstein arcs is what they're called, because they look like arcs or rings. But it was really interesting. So that was the first part 1. That was published in July of 2024, so last year. And then the second part was we didn't have enough room to do more than one. So the MUFON Journal leader and I agreed that we were going to do just one, and it was the Aguadilla UAP. And so there was a number of spots where the UAP passes in front of objects, and then typically below the UAP, you would see background linear features like lines on the tarmac bending out of the way as it momentarily passes in front. And then the interesting one that I thought was really strong was as I passed in front of a building, there's this long linear roof line, and the roof line actually bent down out of the way as it passed in front. And there is a simulation done by an astronomer of a black hole passing in front of a galaxy, and you can see the galaxy bending out of the way as the black hole passes in front. And I actually included that in the second part because it was a dead ringer. They both looked identical to each other. And so we published that in August, and then I found another feature of the Aguadilla UAP that no one had ever commented on. Not in the SCU original paper, not nowhere. And what I noticed was as the UAP was passing in front of darker background objects, there was this bright flare happening above, left, right, or center of the UAP. And you could only see that bright flare because the background was dark. Usually it was the same color as or similar, so it was really hard to see this flare. And I postulated that this is probably what's going on is there's a spatial compression. And then the other part I forgot to mention in part 1 was I actually went over Alcubierre's warp theory. And what I wanted to do was I wanted to do a ray trace, that is, draw a light path from the building curving around underneath the UAP and then up towards the camera to show how and why the light would bend. And so I went and put that together, created what's called a scatter plot in Excel. And there was this broken line in between. There was a disconnect between the upper and the lower hemispheres. So I know space is elastic, so I had to find a formula. It took me about 3 tries, but I found a formula that would allow the lower hemisphere to spatially bend around and meet up with the upper hemisphere. And so what I discovered when I did that was, think of it this way. Everyone's familiar with a wine decanter. You've got this large bulbous bottom base. It narrows up to this thin neck, and then it curves back out again where the wine pours out. And that is actually the shape of the Alcubierre warp bubble. So where a vehicle can sit inside that is actually at the base of the neck where the curve is pointing upwards. Now, so everyone understands how gravity works. Large objects will curve space in towards itself. And the way it works, think of it this way. Take a block of wood, drill 2 holes through it, and then thread some string through them, tie both pieces of string to a doorknob, and then pull the other end apart. And that block of wood will move away from you and towards the doorknob. So the doorknob represents a mass in space like the Earth. The block of wood represents you, and the string represents the curved space. And the way this gravity works is it's creating a lever effect on every molecule in your body simultaneously, pulling them apart, and you're getting pushed away from space and down towards the Earth, and that's how gravity works. In the case of the Alcubierre system, you're creating a curve in space, and you're creating that curve pointing up away from the Earth, so that allows you to counteract Earth's gravity. That's how it would be used inside an atmosphere to point up to allow you to counteract Earth's gravity, and you would tilt it left or right to allow you to move left or right. So I had to reproduce that as part of the paper, and it was the start of where all this, that was all the math that Dave was just mentioning, and it was quite interesting. So then what I discovered when I discovered this light white colored flare above the Aguadilla UAP, what I realized was that was a cold spot. It was a very cold spot. And I know that balloons do not produce a cold spot above them. And if it was a sky lantern or a Chinese lantern, it's basically a mini hot air balloon. They definitely do not create a cold spot above them. So the only thing left would be this spatial compression that occurs above the craft is where this cold is coming from. Now, I've worked in HVAC for several years before I got into engineering consulting. And what that is, it's adiabatic cooling. Basically, think of it this way. The UAP is traveling at, this one was traveling at 100 kilometers an hour. And you've got a pocket of air that's, say, 1 cubic foot in size. And then suddenly it finds itself inside that compressed space relative to what it was is now expanding out into what it finds itself in a 10 cubic foot bit of space, which was compressed down to the same volume as 1 cubic foot. So it's going to rapidly expand into 10 cubic feet. When air rapidly expands, it cools off instantly. And if there's any moisture in it, which in Puerto Rico there would be, that moisture would instantly form a vapor cloud. And it would be a very cold vapor cloud that would be visible to an IR camera. And so that is the theory of what you're seeing in the Aguadilla video in those short moments when it's in front of a dark background object is this vapor cloud. And so that was to be my third paper, or third part to the paper, but it didn't get published. There was too many competing other articles that they wanted to put out. And the more I worked on it, the more I expanded on it, the more I realized, well, you know what? This really deserves to be a full paper. And I won't get into the office politics, but essentially, MUFON headquarters decided it was best that this be published as a full paper in a science journal. So that's the route we chose. We wrote this thing up. It was about 60 pages, 8.5 by 11 in size. Submitted to a journal, and we sat back and we waited for about 2.5 months. And then it was interesting. We got this email that basically it was 3 parts. So part 1 was there was 2 reviewers, both PhDs. The first reviewer read it, and he had his review done pretty quick. He said, there's a couple minor things here and there we need to fix, like typos, and you forgot to put labels on your graphs and stuff like that. I'm like, okay, great. The second part was another PhD reviewer, and they had spent a large amount of time reviewing the paper, and they wrote up a whole bunch of notes. All the little changes here and there. Can you expand on this? Can you expand on that? Minor correction here, things like that. And then the third part was from the journal's management. And they said, reading between the lines, basically it was, the other reviewers could tell you weren't PhDs, and therefore we're not going to publish it.
And that's when I said, Chad, let's make it a book. We got to get the word out. So we made it a book.
Yep.
Dave, you say something really interesting there, because you say it's important to get the book out, the information out.
Yeah.
Why is that? Because, I mean, for the most part, I like what you guys are doing, but this is so technologically advanced. How do you tell that story to layman blue-collar people such as myself in order to get an understanding of the brain power that you guys are sharing?
So, well, Dave and I are both experienced. Dave's been a lot more experienced in college professing, being a professor. I've taught at a college myself, and I've taught coworkers. So we're really good at getting information across to people just getting into the topic. Or whatever
one of the ways we're doing it, Dave, is that we've put a lot of pictures, a lot of explanation. Yes, the math is there. If you're a mathematician, go check the math. And we've explained it in more layman terms. So the 60-page peer-reviewed paper is now 235 pages with graphs and pictures and stuff. Like, we're making it very simple. But a couple things we want to talk about the technology and that stuff. The first thing is to be noted is that we have proven that Dr. Miguel's Alcubierre warp drive theory is correct. It fits the model of the UAP 100%. Chad took it a step farther by getting spatial time and warping of space and elasticity of space and finding formulas and creating them that fit the same explanation. So not only did we prove Alcubierre, but we've proven that the UAPs are using some sort of, and we don't have any other word for it, we're going to call it warp technology. Now, they're not zipping by at warp speed because we'd never see them. But the same technology is being used to make them move, to keep them levitated up, to make them go left, right, up and down, make them take off at instant speed. And we have a great PowerPoint presentation, but we can't show that because it's audio, and we didn't know it was also live, but we didn't want to get into that. But all that's in the book. And so you take all that together, and the technology is that we've proven theories, and we're not the first person that says Alcubera was right about warp theories. We've had a couple other people come up and made micro nacelles and proven things. So we've basically taken all the theories plus our proof and published it. So we want to get the word out there. So that's the first part. What is the technology? We're calling it warp drive. And there's a lot more about it. And to make it easy for people, they can't figure out these things. When Chad's talking about, well, 1 cubic feet of air in front of the UAP suddenly finds itself in 10 cubic feet. That's true, because that's spatial compression and stuff. But let's call it a warp bubble around the craft. And that's why light is getting bent. You're going into the warp bubble. I'm just going to make it real simple for people to understand. And it's getting deflected. Down in Brazil, CSSAA, Rob Freeman was down there, and one of his people with him actually struck a UAP with a laser. We're always told, please don't shine up, don't hit up, circle around, but her circling was a little off. He sent me the video because I wasn't there. I'm always his official debunker, prove it is or is not. And he calls me his debunker. It's a silly, that's my job. I do the forensics. And I couldn't believe what I saw. I actually saw the laser bend around the UAP. I called Chad, and here's another aha eureka moment. That's also in the book. So that's proof. Please don't point lasers at things you don't know what they are.
Yeah, and there was another UAP Skywatcher type video that I also found on YouTube. And again, this time the laser was pointing on the far side of the UAP, but the laser was bending. And lasers don't bend.
Yeah, especially my laser. I don't use those little handheld ones. CSSAA has a couple very high-powered. I don't know if they're legal in Canada, but let's not worry about that. So we go out there with really high-powered lasers. We can't wait to go out again next time and do a couple of them. We bought a couple of them and go on either side and triangulate it going underneath and see if we can catch the warping with lasers that aren't going to dissipate, a million miles up into the air, as I call it. So the technology, we've proven Dr. Alcubera to be correct. We've extrapolated up on that to show you how it operates. What else can we talk about UAPs and technology? Well, that's the number one thing. That's why we went public with a book.
Yeah, we actually went into several aspects of it. So we discussed autopilots. We discussed flight safety methodologies. We discussed flight maneuverability characteristics. And there's two very important examples of one historical photo series taken by Rex Heflin. In it was a 1965 series photos. He took 3 photos of a UAP. It was debunkers say, it was just an upside down pie pan. But
everybody knows that one.
Yeah, and then the fourth photo was a smoke ring that he photographed after it departed. Now, there is a paper that was written on it, and it was quite interesting. There's a long story, but they took the original photographs, which was a Polaroid camera photograph, and they evaluated. The first 2 photos show the UAP as blurred. The third photo, you can see it as actually in duplicate. It looks like a double exposure, except in all 3 photos, the background objects are crystal clear. The power poles are crystal clear. Everything's clear, but the UAP itself is blurred. And like I said, the third one, it looks like a double exposure. You see it in 2 separate locations, except the right-hand side exposure, the craft looks normal. It's perfectly proportioned, and there's no weird bending to it.
Hold that thought, guys. Hold that thought, because we are going to go to break here at the top of the hour. The technology of UFOs, how to contact them. Okay, Palachik, Chad Wanless. Thanks, down. This is Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott. All right, we are clear. Dave and Chad, I'm just going to put you guys back in the green room. I'm going to take a quick break. I'll be right back, okay?
All right.
All right, be right back, guys. We got 2 minutes here. Let's bring the guys back in. There we go. Les Paul Holland, how you doing? And who else has jumped in here for hour 2? I think that's it. Just Les Paul Holland. Rock and roll. You having fun yet, guys?
Good.
Always. Your shows are always fun.
Thank you. Oh, by the way, just because I'm bugging you guys tonight.
Can't
I gotta
quite
get
see that on my
closer.
small screen. What's that one say?
Friends don't let friends UAP.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
that's good. Ah, didn't choose a very comfortable chair. Oh well.
We got 1 minute here.
All the people on YouTube are going, what are these guys talking about? Because we're live on YouTube. Chad, I got a couple things to add before we continue on about what you're talking about.
Okay.
And then we'll talk about the other one in France and
No, yeah, there's the Paul Trent.
Paul Trent and
The similar one, Rouen, France. And,
Rouen, France.
The other one, there's a disc that approaches. The username is Ridoy, R-I-D-O-Y, Ridoy. So I'm going to call it the Ridoy disc.
And it sounds like we're ready to come back.
20 seconds, guys. Thank you to Area 53, Mel WD40, Creepypasta, Richard, Adam, T-Bone, and lovely Lavira, and Human Carl for the great super chats. Very much appreciate the love and support. It's a great way to support what we do nightly on this show. Here we go, everybody.
Okay.
We're back. So we were talking about just before the break.
Go with the second hour. Hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on every major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Hamartiology. Hamartiology is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Let's bring in Dave Palachik, Chad Wanless. They have a great book called Hidden in Plain Sight, Evidence of Exotic UFO Propulsion. It can be found on Amazon as we speak. And right before the break, you were talking about the Aguadilla case and the technology that you used and the lasers and everything that were, kind of brought into everything. And Dave, you wanted to add to that.
Yeah, just Chad was talking about the 4 photos that were taken in 1965. First of all, for our younger people, it was a Polaroid camera. Polaroid cameras are those instant, you press the button, out comes the photograph, and it develops for your eyes. First of all, you cannot do a double exposure. And he was talking about the third one being a double exposure. And fourth, you can't do CGI. And it was long before home computers. The fourth picture was what we're calling a smoke ring, but it actually was probably the remnants of a vapor cloud left behind by the UAP because it took off at such a high rate of speed. The area would have found itself back into normal space, but you're not going to dissipate a vapor cloud instantly, just like you see an F-18 or F-33 at super high speed. When it breaks the sound barrier, it leaves a vapor cone. So that's what these UAPs are leaving. So, Chad, let's continue on and talk about more about technology. We've talked about the warp drive, and we've talked about vapor cones.
Yep.
Let's talk about the other old photos, which are also proof, and then we can get into the nacelles.
Okay, so there's a common thread that was found in several historic photos, including what I was describing with the Rex Heflin. The first photo that's believed to have been taken since the 1947 Kenneth Arnold incident description was actually 1950, taken by Paul Trent in just outside of McMinnville. Now, it was a classic saucer disc-shaped object, but it had a protruding cone out the top. And when you look at the photograph, the cone is slightly tilted, and to the left. And then 3 or 4 years later, there was a photograph taken in France over Rouen. Apparently, it's a gun camera footage. There's some debate on if it was a commercial or if it was a military aircraft and the pilot who took it, but it shows the same basic make and model, same exact shape. Some of the debunker said, "Oh, it's a photocopy of the original photo," but when we looked at it, it's just different enough. And so what I did is, when I was working with the Alcubierre formula, I had this thought: what if you put a smaller warp drive just below and left of the main warp drive? Would it have an effect? Would it shape the warp bubble? And sure enough, it did. The lower left bulged out slightly larger, and so that would give you flight control capabilities. All the Alcubierre papers you ever read or see, people talking on YouTube and stuff, they say, well, there's no flight control capabilities, it's on off. And when you place a smaller one inside the larger one, all of a sudden you do. So you need to have 3 smaller warp nacelles or warp drives inside, just off of center of the main warp drive. And then so that allows you to create a balance control. You can turn 1 or 2 off to tilt the craft in any direction you want. And so at low speeds, its flight controls basically is the same as a helicopter. You slightly tilt it, and that gives you forward momentum in that direction of the tilt. And you tilt it the other direction, it slows down and it goes back in the other direction. So it would give you this pendulum looking type appearance as it's moving back and forth, which is, by the way, a common characteristic reported of disc-shaped UAPs. They look like pendulums when they're moving back and forth, like hanging from a string. And then so then I took that, overlaid it on top of those 2 photos. And what you immediately notice was that it lined up perfectly with the bends in those 2 photos. That cone I was telling you about that's bent slightly to the left, it's off center to the left and bent. The right-hand side of the UAP in both photos is larger, taller than the left-hand side. And so what's going on is it's both are tilted. They're flying to the left. They've turned on a second, smaller warp nacelle to effectuate the tilt and the acceleration to counter Earth's gravity and create forward momentum. And in doing so, that gravitational lensing we were talking about is actually being seen of the craft itself. So the craft appears warped because the light is going through the spatial warp and then changing the appearance to the camera down on the ground.
Which also affects why we see fuzzy UAP videos.
Yeah, and that's the next part. That's what I was trying to get at, what I was about to get into with the Rex Heflin, is there's a reason why they're fuzzy. So the third photo, the double exposure, they're slightly left. The craft looks perfectly normal. Slightly right, it's bent and twisted, and it literally smeared. And so what we figured is happening was, imagine it this way. You're inside one of these, and if you're the pilot. Now you know that light bends as it's coming through this spatial warp. So when you're seeing the outside world, you're not seeing it in like you would look through a car window. It appears compressed and stretched out. So the world doesn't look real to you. And every time you make a minor adjustment in your flight controls, it's like wearing someone else's prescription glasses, but every time you make an adjustment, the prescription changes. And so it becomes very hard to see outside because it's, like I said, you're looking through someone else's constantly changing prescription glasses. So when you're close to the ground piloting one of these, you're going to want to do what we call warp oscillation. You're going to turn off your warp drive for, say, 1/15 of a second, and you're going to turn your external camera on for 1/15 of a second. Then you're going to turn the camera off, and you're going to turn the warp drive on for 1/15 of a second, and you're going to oscillate them alternately from each other. And so what that allows you to do is you can see the outside world in real time, unaffected by the warp drive. And so it provides you flight safety capabilities. You can see it without worry of, are you going to crash into the ground, because you don't know if you're pointing in the right direction quite correctly. And so to an outside viewer who is watching this, and Rex Heflin said, even to his eyes, the craft appeared blurry, and he didn't know why. And the photos show it as blurry, but the third photo captured it perfectly. It must have been great timing, because you see it in both instances of the warp drive on and off. And so you get to see that oscillation. Now, we've all heard of the Lou Elizondo's 5 observables, and there's a 6th one he mentioned in this book, which was biological effects. Basically, through our book, we've identified 3 new observables: gravitational lensing, vapor cones, and warp drive oscillation causing blurring of the UAP itself. And what's interesting about the Rex Heflin is it's a trifecta of those 3 new observables, all seen in 3 photographs. And the 4th photograph shows the rapid acceleration being one of the other observables.
May I please jump in here for a second with a question?
Yep.
That is the blurriness. So
Yes.
many people capture the blurriness.
Mhm.
Many people suspect that maybe these beings have some sort of vibration to them that the camera can't pick up
Yeah.
properly, that's causing it. Many people believe that these craft have these abilities to maybe cloak themselves, and that is part of the issue. What do you think that causes that blurriness?
I think we just said that. That's because the oscillations, the fact that you're going through a warp bubble, you're not seeing clear, clear images inside. And I'm going to bring up another little point. When the Saturn-shaped craft over Brazil, from the airplane looking down on it, was first posted, I looked at it and said, "Oh, it's too clear. It's fake." And that's the one that Chad sent to me. He said, "But look at the frames." And that became the aha moment. Now, what is underneath the craft? What have we proven? The space bubble, let's call it that, the warp, the warp drive is mainly at the bottom. That UAP was shot from an airplane looking down on top of it. That's why it's clear. You're not trying to shoot through a warp bubble.
You're not photographing through a warp bubble.
Yeah.
Yeah. So viewers on the ground and photographers on the ground, when they look up, it's going to appear blurred, because it's like looking through a wine glass underneath the thing. That's part of it. And then the second part of the blurriness is a flight safety feature of oscillating the drive on and off alternately with the cameras, so you can see the world without having to use prescription glasses to counter the effect of the warp bubble's gravitational lensing.
And we've seen enough proof to show that oscillation is occurring.
Yeah. And we've captured it on, there's those 2 where it shows there. And then there's another video that was posted on TikTok in 2023. It doesn't have an official name. The user's name is MD_Ridoy, RIDOY. And it's a really interesting video. You see a large disc. It's zigzagging towards the airplane. What I like about the video is you see this finger from another passenger point out the window, look, kind of symbol. And so the camera is pulled up to the window, and it's an 11-second long video where you see this thing moving towards the airplane, but it's zigzagging back and forth and is going up and down. And when I slowed it down, the ground features, because it was a cloudless area, all the background ground features were warping or moving or blurring underneath it as it was passing over top of them. And then the last 3 frames are extremely important. it darted off horizontally at an extreme rate. It was a rapid acceleration. And the last two frames, you see this white cloud in front of the disk as it's departing extremely rapidly. Now, that scatter plot that I described to you, that I put into my publication, which is also in the book, shows a compressed space in above or in front of a UAP in the Alcubierre formula with the elastics applied. It was a 1-to-1 correlation, an exact match to the cloud that was in front of this Rideau disk. Perfect, exact match. And it showed that with the elastic formula applied to Alcubierre's, there was a real world photo or still frame showing somebody is using Alcubierre's warp drive, and it created a condensation cloud in front of the UAP as it departed. Now, I know some people will say, oh, it might have been a lens flare. Well, the UAP itself, you can see the lens flares. The sun is shining on the edges, and they're left and right of the UAP, and not on the top of the frame, which is where the cloud is occurring. And the cloud is not actually touching the craft, it's ahead of the craft. So, and then the last part is, well, maybe someone had hoaxed it. And so I've done professional CGI, and when you're using things like 3D Studio Max, it does what's called ray tracing. It actually mimics the way light passes through space towards the camera. And so if you want the background object to change, you have to put what's called a helper in, with an invisible lens to make the light of background objects change. Nobody really knew that they needed to do that. Yeah, there were some papers here and there talking about UAP. The earliest one was 2001. They might be causing bending. But this vapor cloud that was in front of, nobody knew it. Nobody had any clue. It was never mentioned. We were the first ones to discover it and to write about it. And it was the reason why the paper wasn't published in the third part in the MUFON journal, is they wanted this part to go through a proper peer-reviewed journal. And so this Rideau video, to me, is the smoking gun, proving Alcubierre's formula is correct, that the elastic part that I added in is correct, and that someone is actually using it. The only question is, who is using it?
Yeah, by the way, Skywatcher posted 2 pictures. I think they even sent them to us, that clearly showed the UAPs they got with vapor cones in front of the UAP, not touching the UAP.
Yeah,
so they
Skywatcher
also got Skywatcher.
Yeah, Skywatcher.ai, their second video they put out, they mentioned, I don't remember the exact quote, but they saw clouds or vapor clouds in front of or above the UAP.
Yep. So more and more people now are starting to see them, which again, what are we learning here? We're learning that you can tell a real UAP video from a fake one if you look for the right components, if it's not clear enough, but you can get individual frames. We're learning, like the technology is very true. I'm going to throw something else out there. Talking about technology, since we're talking about a bubble, a warp bubble, and compressed space inside, you also have compressed time. So you have time dilation occurring inside the bubble. So a lot of people are saying, well, come on, if they're metallic or, whatever, why are they not showing up on radio? You send a signal into a time dilation bubble, I can guarantee you that signal is not going to come back at the same frequency or at the proper amount of time.
Yeah.
So therefore, they're invisible to radar.
Yeah. So to break it down a little bit better, every radio sends out a different pulse. So let's say you have 2 radio for air traffic control nearby. If they send out the same pulse, they will get confused with each other. So they send out their own unique pulse. That way they can tell which radio beam belongs to which radar dish. Now, when that pulse goes through a warp bubble, it's depending on if it's the upper contraction or the lower expansion, it's either going to speed up or slow down, which means when the radar comes back, that signal, that pulse is going to be different. It's going to be longer or it's going to be shorter, and the radar won't recognize it because it's not the right pulse. It looks different.
The frequency or the wavelength has been modified.
Exactly. That's the best way to put it. So it can't recognize its own pulse because the pulse has changed.
So there's another thing we've learned, Dave?
What is the accuracy of all of this? Because we can't predict when they're coming. We can't predict where they're going to fly by. So how do we gain the data to make it accurate?
Lots of observation to start with. And groups like our CSSAA, we're out there with unbelievable amount of technology, modern technology, from video, including infrared, near infrared, ultraviolet, full spectrum, night visions and stuff, doing the video recording, plus security cameras with thermal imaging and stuff now. And we have a lot of digital and electronic sensors. So we're out there with you, like checking humidity, checking barometers, checking GPS changes, checking accelerometers, checking all the different radio frequencies where we know or people are claiming that signals are being found. So when we've built what I call the little football, it's a briefcase that's got 5 different computers in it. They're all Raspberry Pis, all with different radios on them. We also created a passive radar system, so we don't have to send out a signal. We just tune into the nearest radio station. And if we get a signal that's just slightly off that frequency, it shows up on the passive radar. We just purchased the Kraken SDR from the US, which is a 5-channel software-defined radio. We can triangulate the signal, where it's coming from. So we go out with this proper equipment. So the citizen scientists are out there gathering this data as opposed to NASA and the military, to our knowledge, because it was even the NASA panel said, we can't use military grade equipment. We can't expose that. We don't even know what they're looking for. I don't know if they know what they're looking for. I sure hope they do. And they started saying citizen scientists have to go out and get this data. Well, that's what a lot of groups are doing. That's what we're also doing.
Yeah. So we've, as Dave just said, we're looking for that change in the radio pulse. Another thing it's in the book, and I've written recommendations for laser pointer use. So if you can point some lasers on the far side, use 2 or more on the far side of a UAP as it passes in front, does that laser beam bend momentarily as the UAP is passing in front? So you want that beam to be stationary, and as it passes by in front, if that laser beam wobbles, you know that there's evidence of a warp drive being used. Now, take it a step further, what we want to do is take a powerful laser, attach a gun scope to it, and then to aim with. And then what we want you to do, the operators, is wave slowly that laser beam through the space below the UAP, because it's a large bubble, like the wine decanter description. And if it is using an Alcubierre warp drive, what will happen is, as that laser passes through the warp bubble, it's going to bend permanently. It's going to deflect, depending on which part it goes through. It's going to deflect upwards or it's going to deflect downwards. And so you want the operator of the camera to be at a distance from the operator of the laser pointer to actually catch that light bending, redirecting its trajectory as it's passing through that lower warp bubble. And if you can do that, then that's proof that an Alcubierre warp drive is in use.
Gentlemen, I'm going to get you to hold on right there. We got Dave Palachik and Chad Wanless for another 30 minutes on Spaced Out Radio, using technology to find.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with your host, Dave Scott.
All right, we are clear. Hi, Chris. Teen. Yes, we know we have audio issues, but it's coming through perfectly on the podcast side. It is only due to the YouTube side. I don't know why. We're trying to figure it out. Been telling you guys for 2 weeks, maybe 3, maybe 4. Yeah. Ask your questions, guys. You have questions? Put them in capital letters.
Are we back on?
We got about 4 minutes.
Okay.
Having fun, Chad?
Oh yeah.
Good.
It's a little trickier not having my visuals to show, but I think I'm doing a good job.
You're doing a great job.
Yeah, there was another part that I didn't get to mention, which I want to get into, but it was what happened between the MUFON Journal publication and when the book was published, and it had everything to do with Arrow.
Mm-hmm.
So we published in the summer of 2024, and then Arrow said in November they published their thing saying the Aguadilla was dun 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 a balloon or sky lantern.
Of course.
Of course. And so part of our book, we actually pulled a number of videos, stills from videos online, where people had filmed latex balloons, mylar balloons, and including one sky lantern. What do they look like to an IR camera? And they don't look anything like the Aguadilla UAP.
Right. That's awesome. Don't you love figuring this out?
It's definitely fascinating. It's definitely interesting. The tricky part is getting the information out. Like, we're not U.S. military guys coming out whistleblowing and getting our names splattered all over the news. It's like it's coming out through podcasts like this, and with enough, the word will get out, and people will realize there's 3 more observables. And
well, I'm going to sound like a real asshole here for a second, but I've really changed my mind on these guys that we call whistleblowers. They're no more eyewitnesses than you and I are. They're eyewitnesses. They're not whistleblowing any testimony, anything like that. And
they're repeating what they saw or heard.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all.
Yeah. There's nothing whistleblowing about that.
But the data they're revealing is sometimes new, something we all suspected. So they're just kind of confirming that if they're 100% correct.
And the Immaculate Constellation document, there is 2 descriptions in there. Hard to see visual signatures and atmospheric signatures, and we've identified them.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. And the hard part is Immaculate Constellation, name-wise, no longer exists.
Yeah, they renamed it, of course.
Yeah, it's scrubbed, renamed.
I got a buddy of mine who's on the inside, and he's like, when Immaculate Constellation comes out, probably like 10 minutes after it came out, he messages me. He goes, well, there's one that doesn't exist anymore. So when Susan Goff was actually saying it doesn't exist, she was actually telling the truth for once.
Yep. Scrub it immediately so there's no having to deny it. It doesn't exist. We know how that goes down.
Oh, yeah. We got about 25 seconds, guys.
Okay.
Thank you to Adam, T-Bone, Lavira, Human Carl, Richard, Creepypasta, Mel WD40, and Area 53 for the super chats tonight. It's a wonderful way to support what we do on this show on a nightly basis. And we're going to come back in about 11 seconds. Good to have you with us, Mike. We appreciate you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. I want to remind all of you that if you want some free podcasting, all you got to do is download our show on YouTube or any major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram, Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. Final time tonight, we say hello to Dave Palachik, Chad Wanless, talking about UFO technology. They got a great book out, which can be found on Amazon, called Hidden in Plain Sight, Evidence of Exotic UFO Propulsion. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us here.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. It's been a pleasure again, as I've said. So we got a couple more things we want to discuss. Yeah, let's talk about Aquadilla, Chad, and Arrow.
Yeah, it was interesting. We had published this 2-part paper in the summer of 2024. And then about September, maybe October, I was watching some podcasts and they started talking about rumors that Arrow was now reviewing suddenly the Aguadilla video. And then in November, the new leader, I can't remember his name, John something, he was saying in a interview with the not the congressman but the senators, and he wasn't under oath this time, said that they had reviewed the Aguadilla and that they believed it was either a balloon or a sky lantern. And I thought, oh, my paper triggered them. It forced them to react. It forced them to do something. And so we had taken a look online, and you can find them all over YouTube. But a number of people, including some experts, and one guy named Dave Felch, who's done nothing but IR cameras his entire professional career with the military, they had taken videos of latex balloons, mylar balloons, and one as well of a sky lantern or Chinese lantern. What's interesting when you look at a latex balloon through an IR camera is it looks like a soap bubble. It's almost perfectly transparent. And if you get the camera close enough, you can actually see it. In one of Mr. Felch's videos, he had a helicopter fly by and he released a helium latex balloon and you couldn't see it. You had to point to it with an arrow in the video so you could see where it was. Then there's the mylar balloons. Turns out they're perfectly near circular mirrors. And so they reflect the sky. And this one was really interesting. There's even a video out there by Mick West where he was trying to debunk the rubber duck video, but what he wound up doing was proving that the Aguadilla video could not possibly be a mylar balloon. Basically, what he showed was that the sky is much colder than the ground, and the mylar balloon reflects the sky from above, and it shows up as very white, so very cold. And in the case of the Aguadilla, the camera was above at a distance, and so had it been a latex balloon, they would have never seen it. Had it been a mylar balloon, it would have shown up as white, not black. And then there was the video from David Felch of a sky lantern or Chinese lantern, and it shows up as this black fuzzy blob. But there was no white vapor cloud above it that is seen every time it passed in front of a dark background object, which means it could not have been a Chinese lantern either. So when Arrow said it was either a balloon or a lantern, at best, they were suffering from confirmation bias. They didn't bother to look up what do balloons look like to higher cameras. People assume they look the same as they would to a daylight visible light camera, and they don't. They look completely different.
And I think Chad's being too nice when he says like bias, because I think they just outright lied, not under oath. And did they take any questions? No, they got up and left immediately.
Yeah.
They made a statement.
Yeah.
That's
exactly.
all it was. Yeah.
And I remember another video I saw where someone was when you take a video camera, an IR camera, and you look at something in the sky, it looks all blurry and there's darks and lights and stuff. But then when you zoom in on it, then in this case it was zooming in on an actual commercial airliner. You could see the outline of the airliner, and you could see the trail of the heat plumes from the jet engines and stuff like that. Well, what did they do with the Aqua Delta video? When they first started filming it, it was at a distance. But then what did they do? They zoomed in on it, and all of a sudden you could see it much more clearly. So the argument of, well, it was at a distance and therefore it wasn't viewing properly goes away because they zoomed in on it.
Yeah. So we thought that was an interesting statement. And in our book, we clearly state the obvious with proper scientific backing. So, Arrow, take a hike.
Isn't that the truth? I'm curious your opinion, Dave, on Skywatcher.
I have no opinion right now because and I'll explain it, just like Bob Lazar, I sat on a fence, yes, no, for many years. We have proven Bob Lazar to be correct. So when it comes to Skywatcher, I see a bunch of guys who are Hollywoodizing UAP research. And I hate to say that, but that's my opinion so far. Until they prove otherwise, and I've got an open communications, I welcome them to contact CSSAA. We'll discuss, we'll exchange our information if they're willing to do the same. Then I'll come up with a full and public opinion. And that's where I'm standing right now.
Yeah, so what I would say on that is this: their second video showed they stated that they noticed clouds or vapor appearing above UAP. Independently, they discovered this, and apparently this is old footage. It's not brand new footage. So they filmed this stuff before I ever published anything about vapor cones being above UAP or in front of UAP, depending on how fast it goes.
Well, it's funny they just put it out now, Chad. It's interesting. I don't know if it's even theirs. They claim to have this dog whistle that attracts UAPs. Not going to discuss that. I have something similar. We haven't tested it yet. We'll find out. That's again, but most of the time when we go out to do sky watching, we do CE5, protocols and seances, and we've been successful. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, Skywatcher, I'll give you opinion, and I'll come on a show and talk about it in the near future.
We would definitely love to. We definitely love to talk to them to compare notes. There's another group like that, John and Jerry Tedesco.
Yeah,
and we have spoken with them, and they also put out a paper where they described gravitational lensing, not visible, but radar evidence of gravitational lensing. And we've exchanged notes, you could say, and our work confirms each other's work.
Yeah, and we got a good report going with them with their Nightcrawler. Actually, we're looking at doing the same with a big RV with all this portable equipment for just traveling around North America. That's something probably later this year we'll discuss and come up with a plan, or early next year, because we're carrying about 300 pounds on every airplane flight now. That's getting very expensive and very hard to do, especially when you go to France and your luggage with all your equipment goes to Montreal.
Yeah. exactly. Yeah, that's not helpful.
No, we want to do more in just North America. Like I said, I want to go out to Saskatchewan, where we've discovered through MUFON cases and Chad's awareness that there's a huge, nice little hotspot where there's very few people, and yet there's a lot of reports. It's a ferry that goes across a river.
Yeah.
So it's very few people there. Nobody lives there, but suddenly you get 12 sightings.
Yeah.
So there's
They're sitting
lots
there.
of places. Yeah.
Yeah, people are sitting there waiting for the ferry and nothing to do, and they look up and they see stuff. And it brings up another point. It turns out it's very interesting. Saskatchewan is actually a hotspot for large black triangles. There's quite a number of them in the MUFON reports, and I've actually met a number of people who've told me personally that they've seen large triangles in Saskatchewan. Now the difference is because Saskatchewan's population is sporadically spaced out, 1.3 million across the entire province. The numbers of people are in less than a dozen in a particular sighting, and sometimes just 2 or 3 people, or even individuals. Someone in my family saw one near Yorkton. Another friend of mine who I disclosed to, he was like, well, one of those people turned around and says, you know what, I've got to tell you something. On his 19th birthday, the morning of, he was out there standing in front of his parents, in the garage, or in front of the garage, and he's there with his girlfriend, and it's sunrise, which in Saskatchewan, because we're so far north in where he was living, or where we live, the sun rises at 5:30 in the morning. So he said his girlfriend goes, "Oh my God, what the hell is that?" And before he can turn around and look, it was like this curtain came down over the entire neighborhood, like a curtain was lowered in front of the sun. And then he looks up, and all he sees is this gunmetal gray craft. And he told me it was this giant triangle, and I said to him, okay, so how large was it, or at arm's length? That's a measurement we use in MUFON that they teach us. You know, if it's that the moon is the size of a quarter at arm's length, that gives you an idea of how to measure size, right? And he goes 15 feet, and he goes, no, that's not right. He says, you don't understand. I couldn't see the sides of the craft past the houses. It was maybe 60 feet above the trees, and it covered the entire neighborhood. All he saw was the underbelly of it, and then it went over the horizon in front of him, and then he reached out his arms as wide as he could, and this is how wide it was as it disappeared over the horizon, over the trees and the other buildings. And he was absolutely dumbfounded. And another UFO researcher in the same city had also come up with the same report, the same date, from another witness just a couple of blocks over. And so that was the only known daylight sighting of one of these giant triangles. And it was definitely not aerodynamic. It had some kind of beam structure on the back end of it, he said. But he was absolutely dumbfounded, like absolutely awestruck by this enormous thing that dwarfs. I did a calculation based on how the minimum size of it could be, and it was basically the size of a mid-sized mall. It was enormous, not quite the same as Mall of America or West Ed Mall in Canada, but about half that size. So absolutely, it was like 3 or 4 blocks wide at least.
Huge.
And that was the smallest potential size. If it was actually higher than 60 feet, it would be even bigger than that.
No kidding.
Yeah. So listen, it's funny. I wanted Chad to talk about that because in our book, we've also explained what the perfect saucer shape is, which turns out to be a circle or a UFO, as a flying saucer, as they were originally called. And that's using one nacelle with its smaller ones around for, motion and control and, all that good stuff we've already explained. But how does a triangle fly? Well, multiple nacelles. And we're not using the Star Trek word for warp drive being nacelle. That's actually the dictionary's definition of what an engine like a warp drive would be, a nacelle. So we are using that term in our book as nacelles. So Chad did some more math and stuff, and yeah, a triangle is also possible with multiple nacelles, like 5 of them around it. Boomerang, same idea. Tic tac tacs, multiple nacelles, 2 cells. So one thing we did notice is that the perfect best use of space is a flying saucer shape, a circular shape, because you can protect the occupants with inside. So when you do high-speed maneuvers, what are the people inside? They're inside the warp bubble. They're inside the safety zone.
Yep.
So it's interesting, and again, it's all written out in a book in plain English. We haven't written in any other languages yet. So other than engineering, which we got caught for, that's why I didn't publish it, because we wrote it as engineers, not PhD scientists. So the book explains all that, which makes it very interesting reading. And that's more about UAP technology and how it operates. And again, this is our theory, but the math, Dr. Alcabera, it all proves and fits 100%. We're not stretching anything.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It all fits.
And I'd like to throw in the medium size UAP being the round disc.
Mhm.
If you were trying to maximize the internal storage space or internal science space and engineering space, you actually have no choice but to make it a round disc. Yeah, you could make a small triangle, but you're losing operational space or cargo space.
Valuable space.
Valuable space. So it's absolutely no accident that UAPs are round. And it's absolutely no accident that the larger UAPs are triangular, because what we found is when you nest warp drives in a cone shape, it increases the size and the steepness of the warp bubble. And so I believe those giant triangles, the size of malls, those are the interstellar craft going between the stars. And they're coming down here as a show of display once in a while.
I have a couple questions from our audience members, if you don't mind.
Yep.
Me getting to for you guys. Okay, let's start off with T-Bone here. You guys' opinion of the Solway first spaceman photo?
Are you familiar with that, Chad? Because that's something I still haven't studied.
Not necessarily, really. Out of all the photos that I've seen that purport to be of extraterrestrials, there was one that was released by Whitley Strieber, and it was a photo sent to him. He didn't take it, and it shows a gray alien bending down, kind of like I am right now, looking in through a window, and someone snapped a photo of him with a flash.
Yeah.
It's
Everybody's
the
aware of
only
that
one that I believe is actually legitimate. Everything else,
Yeah.
I don't have any opinion on.
That one is the picture of the little girl sitting in like a field, and there's like an astronaut standing behind
Oh
her.
yeah, I remember that.
I know the one you're talking about. Yeah, I do know it, but I haven't studied it or trying to figure it out. I would love to get the original. Then I could give you a really good opinion. But yeah, it's the one, the astronaut standing behind her. Now, the other thing is, are we talking paranormal experience where she is projecting a thought of something and somebody caught it? There's so much you can go into the paranormal side of all this, and it overlaps into UAPs and ETs, but we don't know anything about anything when it comes down to it. We're pretty dumb as humans.
Let's go to another question here from Seymour. Do you believe space-time is fundamental or emergent? If space-time is only emergent, would it help to explain what we all experience when viewing this phenomena?
Emergent, fundamental. I'm not sure I understand the question. Do you, Dave?
No, I'm questioning it because I can take that 2 different ways. But space-time being fundamental, yes, it's been proven. Space-time is definitely a fundamental scientific theory, proven. Can you travel faster than light? Yeah, you can bend space, and you go from point A to point B without going through all the other points in between. They've proven that without a doubt in theoretical terms. But remember, today's math and theory, also we all need is the power of the technology in order to build it to prove it, because they're pretty spot on. Emergent, is it the future or what's coming next, or are we able to do it? I'm not too sure about the question in that method or that in that text of why they're saying it, but yeah, I think all this is going to happen, but not in my lifetime. We don't have the energy. We can't build a warp drive now because we don't have the way of producing the energy required to do it.
Awesome
That we
answer,
know
Dave.
of. Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome answer. Gentlemen, we got about 4 minutes to go before we have to say goodnight to you. You guys have been jam-packing us with information. Do either one of you have anything that you want to make sure gets out to the public?
By the book?
Yeah, by the book. I got one last little tidbit. Dave mentioned it before. There was a 2021 paper published on micro warp bubbles.
Right.
A guy named Harold Sonny White and
Dr.
his
White.
team, they were working on the Casimir effect, and they accidentally figured out how to create a micro warp bubble. It's about 4 micrometers across, so smaller than a human hair, and purely by accident. And they created a small micro warp bubble. And then the next steps was they were saying, well, we should do a daisy chain of them in our next test, which they've not yet published the results of. But I did the math. What happens when you take 5 small warp bubbles, put them in a row, and sure enough, the Alcubierre math shows that the warp bubble grows in size and length.
Yeah.
But the steepness of it, the gravitational acceleration, goes down with every warp bubble you add. However, when you add them into a cone shape, where you spread them out into a larger cone, the warp bubble grows in size and strength. And so what you would do is you would turn on and off the outer warp nacelles in that cone shape to affect throttle control. Now, the Casimir effect does generate, is theorized to generate power, and we think that's where the power is coming from to create the warp drives, is from the Casimir effect.
But that's a pretty small warp bubble, but they proved it.
Yeah,
So
but
we're
all you
getting
need
closer.
to do is build a couple billion into a larger cone shape, say about 2 to 3 meters long, 6 inches wide. Yeah.
Again, thinking of Star Trek, that's where you need like 600 teradyne gigawatt, like power we don't have. A supernova. Yeah. That would be enough power. It's coming.
Yeah.
Is it coming when the aliens will actually arrive
and land on the White House lawn? I hope they come to our lawn instead, to tell you the truth. So yes, I've seen many UAPs. I have not seen an ET. So I can admit to that. Chad has. I have not. I'm still waiting.
Yeah, I have, and it was very traumatic.
Yeah, so I'm not saying I'm volunteering, but anyways, we're all open to everything, and we hope we gave you a good insight as to what we're not trying to make money to buy this book because we're trying to make money. Forget it. It's $9 for an e-journal. We want the word out there. So if you want to read about this, download the e-reader version of it for $9 or whatever it is. It's in the States. It's even less. I think it's $8. You can buy hardcover and paperbacks if you want, but we really want to get the word out. And we thank you very much for allowing us to come and talk to you, Dave, and get the word out. And I hope we come back with more, like a little bit more when we've got Skywatcher working with us. And we'd like to bring, you haven't introduced John and Jerry Tedesco yet, have you?
Yeah, I did. I brought them in.
Oh, you did?
Oh, I mentioned
Dave.
Oh, sorry.
I haven't interviewed them yet.
Right.
No.
They wanted to
that
do
is
a joint,
on the agenda.
They want to do a joint podcast with us where we're sharing our technology. So maybe we can arrange one to do together.
Oh, well, the door is open.
Okay.
You just let me know. Gentlemen, thank you for coming on Spaced Out Radio. Let's give your book a shout out again. Hidden in Plain Sight, Evidence of Exotic UFO Propulsion by Dave Palachik and Chad Wanless. It can be found on Amazon. Coming up next, Swamp Dweller to kick off hour number 3. Then extra small, Lee Strauss with the Q&A. We'll be right back. You're listening
to Spaced Out Radio with your host, Dave Scott.
All right, gentlemen. Thank you for staying up late for us. A wonderful, wonderful time.
Good.
Appreciate
I'm
it.
glad it's now Saturday. Thank you, Dave. That was great. Look
That
forward
was
to
a lot of
doing
fun.
another one, and I'll get John and Jerry, and we'll figure out what we want to discuss, because we both got similar ideas and incredible footage. And I think it's time we might bring up some of the stuff that we have caught on our trips.
Absolutely.
I'd like to talk about the Mojave Desert, the one I flew down to watch two UAPs battle it out in the skies.
Nice.
Now, there's a thought for you.
Well, I'll let you guys go. And Davey, let's stay in touch, buddy.
Sydney, you got my phone number. You know how to get hold of me, and I've got a new email address. Don't ever use the DP at MUFON Canada one. I now have Dave p.mufon at gmail.com
Okay.
or
Appreciate it.
outlook.com, either one.
Outlook.com.
All right.
Have a night.
Outlook.com.
Good night, guys.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
Bye.
Cheers.
Take
Bye.
care. Dave Palachik, Chad Wanless. Great guys. We'll be right back, everybody. All right. Let's bring in extra small because there he is.
Hey there, buddy.
I believe in Lee Strauss.
How you doing, bud?
I'm good, man. We missed you last weekend.
Yeah, I missed you guys. I saw all the great photos and I was like, shucks.
Next year.
Yeah.
When we go back.
Mm-hmm.
Flat Six, how you doing? Good to see you, my man. Anybody else sneak in here? Little Jimmy Goodall was here. He was fun in Vegas, man. Holy cow. And thank you tonight to lovely Lavira times 2, Blue Cruise, Human Carl, Walter, T-Bone, Adam, Area 53, Mel, Creepy, and Richard for the super chats tonight. We greatly appreciate the love, everybody. Thank you very, very much. We're going to get going here in about 10 seconds. All right, here's hour number 3 of Spaced Out Radio. Beautiful planet we call Earth. Hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on every major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Hamartiology. Hamartiology is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Let's head to the swamp.
Hello and welcome to Spaced Out Radio's Swamp. I'm Swamp Dweller, and tonight I'm going to take you on a mystic journey to the unknown, sharing tales of monsters, legends, and nightmares. Welcome to the Spaced Out Radio Swamp. In May 2022, I worked at a gas station and truck stop in a small town outside of Houston in Dallas. For most of my time working there, I was a night shift employee from 3 to 11 p.m. To make this short, let me add a little background on the business and some minor details about the town I was in. The town is rather small and rural. The closest shopping center is quite a few hours away, and one of the only grocery stores in town is Dollar General. The store I worked at was right next to an interstate that went throughout Texas, so we got a lot of customers, especially on weekends. We typically saw a lot of truckers, churchgoers, and people traveling with their little league teams. Now that the basics are covered, I can tell you about the events that took place that May. On May 12th, around 1:50 p.m., I got ready for work. It was a typical day, thus far until I got an emergency alert stating, "Escaped armed convict male." This was strange, considering the nearest prison to me was an all-female prison and was more than 45 minutes away. Despite the alert, everyone was still required to attend their shift. 3 o'clock rolls around and we're all standing around the break room waiting to clock in. I remember everyone being super on edge, people whispering about the Amber Alert, trying to get more details about what was happening. Nonetheless, we got to work. Typically, we get 2 breaks that were about 15 minutes each, equating to 30 minutes in total. This was awful, but we made do. This isn't really important, but it does add context. We were not allowed to go outside for our breaks due to the alert and for our safety. The night shift crew was hands down the best group of people to work with. but on the first night of the unpleasant week, it was not the 18th. Once we clocked in, it was like there was a floodgate that opened for all the police and TDCJ, Texas Department of Criminal Justice officers, to come in. We had hundreds and hundreds of people coming in for some barbecue sandwiches and simple pizzas. And one of my favorite coworkers was the front end of it all. She was helping people left and right while making sure she was doing her shift leading duties. I ran back and forth from the jerky case to the deli case, trying to get as many people out as possible. It was a very crazy night. Everyone searching for this convict was passing through our store, just trying to get nourishment for the long night ahead. That night, my coworker and I only got a break each after helping what felt like 1,000 officers, but it was not in vain. We did end up getting some information from the people on the search, things like what this man looked like and what he was going to prison for. There were possible ideas of where this guy was heading, and they thought it was towards San Antonio, about an hour away from where we were. Now, I need some more background on the town I was in. Like I said before, the town was very rural. There were farms and ranches everywhere and tons of wooded areas. Also, to mention again, we were right on an interstate, so there were plenty of places to hide and run. I will spare you all the boring details of my week and get into the horrifying part. The search for this waste of life lasted 3 whole weeks. On June 2nd, he broke into a ranch house only a few miles from town. While in there, he managed to find a razor, shave his head, and cleaned up his face. He ate the food that the family had left. It's unknown how long he was in the house or if he had been wandering around and just found this empty one. Well, that day, a family of 5 walked into the ranch and found this piece of scum in there. The convict murdered this family. A grandfather and his 4 grandsons were brutally murdered. He shot them and then robbed them of the grandfather's truck and some guns. A relative hadn't heard anything from the family in a couple of hours and knew of the situation that was going on in this town. They called the police, and when they found the bodies, there was a national alert that went off telling everyone to be on the lookout for a white truck. This was difficult for every officer because there were so many surrounding towns, and they couldn't even know what direction or how long ago this person had left. I don't know how they did it or what efforts they exhausted, but they managed to find the truck and set out spike strips to pop the wheels. The convict got out of the vehicle and started shooting at the police, who returned shots. Eventually, their shots landed, and the man was declared dead. 3 weeks of torment for everyone in my town was finally over. This guy managed to kill 5 innocent people, children. This man killed children. In Texas, we have the death penalty, and I genuinely believe he got what he deserved. My mom told me once that it was over. There was a photo of his body on the internet, and to this day it's still on Twitter. I look at that photo sometimes, and honestly, I feel like the trapped air in my lungs came out at the same time. This idiot was dead.
Thank you, Swamp Dweller, for another creepy story. If you want more just like that, head on over to YouTube, type in Swamp Dweller, hit subscribe, ring that bell, and listen to a bunch of stories, thousands of them, for free, right there. Time for Lee. Extra Small Lee Strauss is here with the UFO Cryptid Q&A. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, man, I am doing fantastic. For the last couple of days, I've been in the sun. I don't know if you can tell, but I'm looking really pink in the cheeks.
You also look very much like you've been wearing sunglasses.
Safety glasses at work, yes.
Yes, we could tell. And your ball cap, because your forehead and your eyes are bright white. They are glowing.
Yep, the hard hat. Yeah.
Love it. Love it, buddy. Love it. We missed you in Las Vegas last weekend. I know for personal reasons you couldn't make it, but man, you missed a good time, especially out driving to Area 51.
Well, like I said, I saw the pictures and then I saw the Area 51, sign and extraterrestrial highway. I was like, are you kidding me right now? I missed that? Oh, all I need, Dave, one camera and a tripod out there. I would have had
It
something.
was a little creepy, my friend,
Ah,
driving out there, because here's a couple of things I noticed. I mentioned this the other night. When construction crews put down gravel on a
mhm.
road, they always pat it down.
Uh-huh.
This road is not patted down, okay,
Oh.
because it creates dust so they
Uh-huh.
can see where you are. And then you have to understand that there are sensors all along that road
Yeah.
and audio sensors as well.
Yeah.
Okay. So they knew we were coming way before we even knew they were there. And we parked behind this knoll. And one of our listeners, Mario, along with Jim Goodall
Yeah.
and Jurgen Hess, walked up to the top of this knoll. And I guess Jim was showing them around, where they had climbed one of these mountains way back in the day to spy in on Area 51 that he had done that with John Lear. And
Yeah.
it was just great. But he comes back down the hill and he's like, yeah, the camo dudes are out. You can see the reflection. And I'm like, oh, cool. So we turned back up. And then Jurgen Hess, myself, and Tim James, we decided to drive up the road about another couple miles. And I'm looking for the camo dude truck. And all of a sudden, way off the distance, you see this glint of sunlight off the windshield. And it's
Uh-huh.
just like a tiny little orb about, half the size of a dime. And like, okay, there they are. There they are. And then
Yep.
we get to the sign and they're watching us right there on the hill in their Ford Raptor, and it was so exciting, just to be out there. It's ominous, man. It
Yeah.
really is a little ominous. So it was great. It was an experience of a lifetime. I know it doesn't sound like much because literally you're on a gravel road. You see nothing but mountains and gravel roads and cacti all over the place. And one antelope. We saw one antelope.
Okay.
And but to me, it was like being in Mecca.
Oh,
Like this
yeah.
is where it is. This is where
Yeah.
it's happening. And it might not be aliens, it might not be UFOs, but all the great toys are just on the other side of those mountains, man. And it's
Yeah.
exciting to think about.
Yeah. Your mind just goes and goes and goes. And you never know though, Dave. They could have underground base. Well, we believe they do. They could have ETs down there. We don't know. It could be that close.
Well, you know what? Either way, I'm very, very happy. I want to do it again and again
Yeah.
and again. I want to try different roads just to see where they go. The funniest part, I forgot to mention this, the funniest part about it was while we were out at the sign, this 4-door Jeep Rubicon pulls up. And it's these real preppy dudes, they're a little heavy set. Okay. And I'm a chubby guy,
Yeah.
but these dudes are bigger than me. Okay. And their size doesn't really matter, but they have this like real California attitude that they had driven in from California in their Rubicon. And one of the ladies wouldn't get out of the vehicle. The other one did to take the pictures. And they're like, man, that road's pretty slippery. I had to put it in 4x4 so I didn't get washed off the side of the road because of the soft gravel. And dude was serious. He was
Wow.
completely serious. And I'm sitting there thinking, you drive a brand new Jeep Rubicon. That vehicle is not going anywhere.
No.
You don't need to put it in 4-wheel drive. But he wanted to show off that he had the Rubicon, right?
Oh,
Wanted to
yeah.
show it off, talk about it. And here I'm thinking, buddy, I have a Jeep at home and I drive my Jeep in way worse conditions than a warm day in the clouds in the middle of the desert on a soft gravel road. Come take your Rubicon on some of the paths that I go on. You
Yeah.
know, let's destroy it a bit. Let's put a scratch in it. You know?
Exactly.
Oh man.
Exactly.
Once they left, Tim, Jurgen, and I just literally started laughing. Literally
You
started
owl.
laughing because if you have to put your vehicle in 4x4 going down a soft gravel road with no, I mean, you can't even call them ditches. Okay. Okay. You have the gravel road that's about 3 inches higher than the little divots
Yeah.
on the side.
sides. Yeah.
I'm like, come on, buddy. Come
No, he
on.
just
I
had to,
know
he
he
had to,
doesn't listen to this program because he's
yeah.
too good for that.
Oh,
But
yeah.
his purple Rubicon that had a clean shine on it, okay,
Oh,
you're
yeah.
out of your element, dude. You bought a Rubicon for the sake of having a Rubicon, and you have no idea what it could do. You have no idea what it's for. You probably don't even know what Rubicon means. But there's my rant for the day.
You know, I think all of us, you know, that go out there, Dave, yourself, myself, and many of the other listeners probably have a 4-wheel drive of some sort to get us out to where we want to go to do our investigations. It's almost
Dude,
a
you can
must.
take a Hyundai Tucson out there and it isn't going to break.
Your old
Unbelievable.
Geo Metro.
My goodness. My old 95 Pontiac Sunfire could survive that road.
Yeah, that's
Ridiculous.
funny.
Ridiculous. So what do you think about the Lou Elizondo stuff? I mean, there's more on X about it today regarding the fact that he's now put out 2 UFO pictures that are completely fake. There's a
Yeah.
big debate going on right now, Lee, and I think we need to talk about this. There's
Yeah.
one part that says he's a counterintelligence agent. It's his job to try and pull the wool over our eyes and make us look foolish. But there's the other side that is saying Lou is getting set up. He obviously is being handed horrible information from the inside. And because he's the face of the franchise, he's going to pay the price for this. What do you think's going on, Lee?
Well, you know, I kind of talked briefly with Tim James earlier about this, and I haven't seen the second photo, so you're going to have to excuse me there. But I did see the one where, you know, it's the 2 circles. You got one above the other. One is kind of a whiter color than the bottom one that is dark. And it looks like maybe a field because you can see the roadway, right? That goes and intersects and does a 90-degree turn. And then there's the whiter one above. And it kind of looks like a reflection for the people that haven't seen this photo. But that is due to the sprinkler system that goes around in the field, right? I believe, Dave, that, you know, he's been doing this for 5 years or so now, and he wants out. You know, he probably gets bothered 4 or 5 times a day or more to come on people's show, right? And from what Tim was telling me, he's now living in like a 5th wheel on a piece of property because he doesn't want to be messed with, right? So the possibility here, Dave, is that he wants a way out, and this is a good way to kind of get out from underneath all the weight that is on him, to pull some stunt like this.
I don't know if it's a stunt. I'm disappointed because even if where I'm disappointed, okay, with Elizondo, as we got about 5 minutes to go before we got to go to break, is this is a guy who ran the program. You think he would be able to tell good evidence from something that is not a UFO, but what we're calling a UIP, an unidentified irrigation phenomena. Okay. So now we have the ULP, the unidentified lighting phenomena, and the UIP, the unidentified irrigation phenomena. And you would think with his experience of running the ATIP program, being around this subject for almost 20 years, that he would have a grasp on what is good information, what is not, that he would have the ability to vet these photos, whether or not he was set up. Okay. Like Lee, if you hand me one of your videos and you've got some incredible UFO footage from Mount Baker and all through the Cascades, okay, if you were to hand me those videos, I'm going to buy it verbatim because you're my friend. I know you're not going to pull the wool over my eyes. But if you and I were agents and you're handing me a photo saying, here's one you can use, I'm going to question whether or not there's validity to that. What else could it be? Could this have been manipulated in any sort of way? Because we are in a sensitive topic and we are in a subject where it's going to be very, very easy to put egg on someone's face by trying to get that photo out to the public. Now, if Elizondo did know about that picture being fake, shame on him. Because the internet with a guy like him is watching every move. And if they could, they would probably follow him to the grocery store to find out what kind of ply paper he uses for toilet paper. Okay. And then they would criticize that. He's in a no-win situation on the internet because he is internet famous because of this subject. Okay. That's much the same as an athlete, a movie star, a musician. Their scrutiny is horrible. They have to be perfect all the time. And when you are running a situation like this, you need to be extra careful. And I just don't know how that even comes out, my man.
Well, look, one of the other possibilities, Dave, and I know you kind of mentioned this, but we've got a lot of whistleblowers coming out. It seems like there's a new whistleblower every week coming out, right? So if he's able to throw shade, not just on his particular situation with this photo, but if he's able to throw shade on the whole thing and kind of, put the whole thing into question, that might be beneficial to some parties.
It could be. It could be. And that's the big mystique. That's the mystery. Because he's done this twice now. And now people are going to question his credibility. People are going to question if they weren't before these photos were even out, people were questioning his ability with his knowledge and whether or not he was telling the truth or not. We saw the debates. We've discussed those debates on this show. But now, how do you trust the message? I was talking to one of his advisors earlier today. And I asked the question, let me just pull it up here. I asked the question, this is going from bad to worse. And he said, I used to be solidly behind Lou's corner, but now the jury is out. So, is Lou doing it to himself? Or is there somebody at the Pentagon giving him bad information? We need that answer. This is a guy who's been in this field long enough and popular enough, being the face of the franchise, that we deserve an answer. People need to know, were you played or were you not? And I think it's imperative for Elizondo to come out on his social media and discuss that.
Exactly.
Even as uncomfortable as it may be. We're going to continue this talk, and we're going to get into whistleblowers next with...
This is Spaced Out Radio. Your host, Dave Scott.
All right, extra small.
So Woo Rider said that he did give an answer on his channel.
I'll go pull it up here.
Yeah, I'm trying to find it here.
He gave an update on leaving the UAPDF. Okay. I got it here. I'll read the statement when we come back. Thank you, Derek, for putting that out there. I missed this when I was looking at his account.
Yeah. It seems he's got to come out rather quickly, and it sounds like he might have.
Right?
Hmm. Yeah, I know that there's been a couple times, Dave, when I've been out in the field and I've caught something moving through the sky, and I'll say, "Hey, I caught something. I'm not sure what it is or whatever." And you go back and you review the footage and review the footage. You have to do it many times to kind of get an idea of what you might be looking at. And it was a bug in a flashlight beam. So,
Well, you are a flashlight kind of guy.
Only when it matters.
We got about 2.5 minutes, bro.
I am so sad that you guys got to go to Area 51 and I did not.
I know.
Did you guys win any big jackpots down there?
Brad Bunt did. He won, I think, $1,800 or something.
Wow.
I tried, did not work. Dude, I didn't have that extra small power with me this time. No, I'll be honest with you. The truth of the matter was I did not have Tim Mothman's goatee sitting beside me. That's the good luck charm.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Last year when I won big in Reno, that's because Tim Mothman's goatee was right there.
Yep.
So I'm blaming Tim.
Uh-huh.
See, Tim even says, Dave didn't have the goatee. That's right. I didn't get any lucky tugs in before hitting the max bet button.
Yeah.
Would have been more, Tim, if you were there. Thank you tonight to T-Bone ×2, Lovely Lavira ×2, Human Carl, Walter, Blue Cruise, Adam, Area 53, Mel WD40, Creepy Pasta, and Richard. Thank you for the great super chats, everybody. What a great night. I really appreciate the love. All right, Lee, we got about 25 seconds. Seven seconds. Comes to map out. Spaced Out Wherever you are. All right. Reminder to all of you that if you've missed most of this show or others, you can check out our free archives on YouTube or any major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. All right, here's Extra Small. Lee Strauss hanging out with us, talking about Lou Elizondo. Was he set up or was he not? And I want to give a shout out to Derek in our chat room for pointing out this statement that Lou made, saying, as you know, I'm always the first to admit mistakes, but this is not one of those times. The facts regarding the photo I shared from a private pilot, as I emphasized several times yesterday during the forum, are as follows. Number one, the specific photo had only just been provided to me by a private pilot that morning prior to the forum. 2, the photo had not yet been vetted. 3, the dimensions I quoted were per the pilot's own assessment of what he saw based on altitude and experience. The purpose of me showing that photo was to illustrate the need for civilian and commercial pilots to have a central reporting mechanism to report potential anomalous sightings. In this case, the pilot who took the photo, using his own camera, did not have a way to report what he believed was anomalous. Once again, as I stated during the forum, I only received permission to release it that morning and only was made aware of it shortly after. Not sure how many times I need to say it, so I will say it again. The photo was not yet vetted, and I made that perfectly clear. This illustrates a bigger point here. When pilots or anyone else, for that matter, come out to share what they feel may be anomalous, are faced with fierce ridicule instead of productive dialogue from some in the UFO community. They learn quickly to never ever share again. As I communicated during the forum, my purpose of sharing the photo was simply to illustrate there is no central reporting mechanism in place for private and commercial pilots to report what they believe might be anomalous and for these photos and videos to get vetted. This remains a serious issue. The pilots see things on a daily basis they can't explain, some identified, some misidentified, and some truly anomalous that require additional attention. In the end, whether a private pilot sees what turns out to be a cloud, a balloon, a tennis shoe, or a UAP, we need a reporting mechanism to ensure that it can be analyzed and resolved. This was the reason I shared the photo, and I emphasized that several times during the forum. I could have used the photo of an inner tube to provide my point, but I used instead a real photo taken by a real pilot or something he thought was anomalous, which I emphasize had not been analyzed yet. The ones who are screaming about it, instead of discussing respectfully, it as I hoped, missed the entire point of the photo and are not helping other pilots in the future coming forward. Deflection, Lee, or true statement?
I think that's a true statement. It feels true to me. Yeah.
I'm unsure. Here's the thing that I would ask. Why at any point would you take a photo that has not been vetted into such an important meeting? You're the dude.
Uh, to prove a point, okay? Just because he's talking about pilots need some place to post their sightings, right? We have New Fork, you know. Why can't he post that stuff on New Fork? There's already a civilian, um, you know, place to put your reports. What it doesn't need to necessarily be in government control. In fact, I would rather it not be, right?
What about MUFON?
Well, MUFON, I mean, there is those places, you know, that you could submit your reports.
All I'm saying is, I think that's a snafu coming out saying there is no reporting system. Yes,
Yeah.
there is.
Mhm.
Yes, there is. There are numerous reporting systems. Even if you want to use the shady Enigma labs,
Right.
there is reporting systems out there that any pilot can use. They're all free. If they want to be anomalous, anonymous, pardon me, not anomalous,
Yeah.
anonymous. But here's
Right.
the other point that I want to say. He goes off saying, I'm going to read this for a second. Let me see where I can find it here. The specific photo had only just been provided to me by a private pilot that morning prior to forum. How did this pilot know Lou Elizondo?
Great question. Great
Okay.
question.
Why would Lou look at that and all of a sudden bring it forward, whether it was vetted or not? When you're sitting in the company of people that you're sitting in front of,
Mhm.
okay, why would you bring a photo like that? Like all of a sudden I take a picture of my nostril hair and now we're looking into a forest?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like you're setting yourself up for failure.
Yeah,
And like I said, once again, I want to just counter here before I get you to answer. I like Lou Elizondo. He's been good to me. But just because he's good to me, I'm doing my job as a journalist to question this. And 2 plus 2 is not equaling 4 right now.
Yeah, so it was a bad call on his part. But yes, there could be like we talked about, there could be a, you know, ulterior motive to this. So the only reading what you read out loud about, you know, his statement there makes me think that the only other reason he would have put it out is to throw shade on all the other people coming forward with their you know, their story.
Well, I think it's a dangerous precedent. I really do think it's a dangerous precedent. And it should be, you know, he can't be above critique on this one. You know what I'm saying?
Okay. However, he did say several times that the photo hadn't been vetted. At least he says, I did not watch the interview, so
No, but still there's enough out there to look at. He stood up and he held the photo up. Yes, he did say it hadn't been vetted. But if you were in an important meeting like that, okay, let's use a sports analogy here. Okay. If you're going into the bottom of the ninth and you're in the American League of Baseball where pitchers don't hit, and there's 2 out, bases loaded, are you going to call a pitcher in from the bullpen to pinch hit against the other team? Or are you going to bring in a guy who knows how to swing the bat?
yeah. Yeah, it's bad form. I agree. You know, especially with like what you're saying, you know, all those people are there. You got reporters there from, you know, who
And
knows where.
here's another thing about the photo, Lee. He said he got the photo that morning that the guy took of a UFO. How long had that guy been working on that photo to set up Elizondo? To make it look like it was a gray craft with a shadow underneath it, when in reality it was two irrigation fields side by side. That took a lot of work. That's just not a photograph taken. There is
Right.
photo manipulation on that.
Yep. Yep. He
And
changed
why
the color.
would he trust that source?
I have no idea. I don't have those answers.
But what I'm saying is, these are questions that need to be answered. Lou, if you want to, and this is a message to Lou Elizondo, if you want to protect your reputation in this field, if you plan to still continue in this field, you have to go on a show that is going to ask you some tough questions. And when I say tough, I'm not saying lambasting tough, like half the podcasts out there who just think it's their job to act as fake journalists and rip a person a new butthole. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying you need to get in front of a microphone and a camera and have somebody ask you the tough questions. Lou, tell me about those photos.
Yeah.
Tough questions are not attack questions. Attack questions are aha, caught you moments. But he needs to go on a show where he can be asked those tough questions. Lou, why did you trust that guy to take his photo that morning in front of one of the most important meetings publicly about this subject? Why did you do that? Did you not have other photos you could have used? How did you know the pilot? How did you know the photo was real? How do you know it wasn't photoshopped?
Yeah. The other thing too is somebody like Lou has got to have somebody with him, right? That helps him through some of this stuff, especially, or is vetting any information that he is getting from the public. I would think he's got somebody like a right-hand man, somebody that helps him get on shows and this and that and the other thing, and vets a lot of stuff before it gets to him. Where's that person?
I honestly believe that's his lovely wife, Jennifer, who usually does that for him.
Well,
maybe not. I could be wrong.
Uh-huh.
But I know she used to vet the podcasts that he would go on.
Okay.
Right? I've only talked to her once. Great lady. Strong, strong wife in so many different ways. As a partner, as a supporter, everything. And, kudos to her.
Yeah.
But just the whole other aspect of it all, brother, I mean, it just messes up. We got 8 minutes left. What do you got hiding in your closet?
In my closet? Well, we've got a bunch more people coming out now with some UFO news, don't we? So we got on Monday, it sounds like we've got another possible skiff and other people coming out into the public eye to talk about.
That was canceled. I don't know if you caught that. That was canceled.
What? You're kidding me.
The meetings coming up were canceled. Yeah, sorry to break that. Sorry to break that.
No idea.
Yeah. There's no reason why as of yet. All it was it was announced that the meetings had been canceled.
Well, that's a whole nother ball of wax, isn't it?
Well, I mean, here's the thing. David Grush supposed to show up for the private meetings in the skiff.
Yeah.
No shows on the event. Elizondo comes out, presents a fake photo, and now the hearings are canceled indefinitely. What the heck is going on?
Well, that's a great point. I mean, what the heck? I heard there was more people going to come forward and talk about their sightings and what they knew and what they had seen, but that's a travesty. Um, now my mind's working. Like, what the heck is going on?
Yeah, it's a mess right now. The entire field on the governmental side is a complete mess, and people need to recognize that. So Dean Johnson broke today. There will not be a UFO hearing next week. A spokesperson for the U.S. House of Representative Oversight Committee told me this morning a UFO-related public hearing before the committee's Federal Services or Federal Secrets Task Force has been previously anticipated by the task force chairwoman, Anna Paulina Luna.
Mhm.
So, canceled. Canceled. Bye-bye.
Well, maybe they're getting more ducks in a row. I mean, that's a possibility that they have other players as well that want to, tell us what they know. So, that's looking at the bright side of things, and of course there's that dark side too. So, who knows what's going to happen? We'll have to keep our eyes peeled.
But don't you feel, Lee, and I apologize for cutting you off there. I'm doing that really good tonight for you. Don't you feel, though, that this is all just becoming a public ruse for entertainment purposes only?
But yet some new information has come out. We had I can't remember his name right now, but he said that there's 4 different types of ET species that they recognize. I mean, all that information popped off recently. So just out of left field too. So
That was Dr. Eric Davis. And yes,
yes.
that one shocked me a little bit. I will give you that. I'm not saying we're not going to get breadcrumbs. Okay.
Uh-huh.
But if you're going to say that publicly, and I hate the fact that I'm saying this, Lee, I really do. Okay. But if you're going to say that publicly in front of a camera, where literally millions of people around the world are going to be able to see it, you got to tell us more than just we're in contact with 4 species. I mean, as impressive as that is, you got to give us more juice. We're thirsty.
Yeah.
But you're right. You're right. It was a step in the right direction.
So it seems to me like you've got different factions working within this disclosure, right? Some people want to keep it under wraps, and then some, want to let things come out slowly but surely. I think the factor that they're doing it the way they're doing it, it shows that they don't want to freak people out, that they just want to kind of slowly, turn up the water, and get it to boil really slow, so you don't realize that you're in hot water, so to speak.
No, very true. Very true. And I really do believe, though, that there is something going on. There's shenanigans being played right now.
Behind the scenes, of course, there is. Yeah. I mean, we had like a year ago, we had another one of these announcements where all these people were supposed to come out and come forward. And you had several that did not show up out of the blue. And word on the street, was, well, they got told that they can't because their pension would be subject to being taken away from them. So there was that.
2 minutes ago here. Do you think then that these hearings being canceled will be canceled for a while?
I don't know. I would think that the people that want disclosure want to get all their ducks in a row. And the fact that Lou Elizondo came out with this photo and it was not good, they want to probably make sure that everything lines up right. That would be my best guess is they want to make sure everything lines up correctly so that nobody's making a fool out or a mockery of the situation when they come forward with it.
Yeah. I mean, they got to clean up their game.
Yes.
And you know what? I don't blame Congress. I think they are trying to figure things out. I think it's the people whom they are relying on for information who are the ones playing games.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all the people who've been put on the pedestal, who've been, been made to be almost UFO deities.
Yeah.
That are the ones that are screwing this up. They all said the experiencers, Lee, were the ones who were going to screw it up. And that's why we needed to end ufology, because nobody wanted to talk about little green men. Nobody wanted to talk about UFOs. This is why we got UAP, NHI, psionics, taking everything away from us. And they're the ones doing it to themselves, Lee. Your thoughts?
Yeah. I agree that faction is out there, and I think it's probably the military industrial complex, that's on that side of wanting to keep everything hidden, everything down, because there's a lot of people potentially that could be in a lot of trouble, once this breaks, and all the technology that they've been holding back from us, by giving it to Lockheed Martin and Boeing and all these other companies instead of, taking it on themselves. I think there's a lot of irons in the fire and a lot of people can be in trouble.
Thank you, Lee, for a great Q&A tonight.
I know you're out there somewhere. This is the opportunity to
Limited.
1,000
So
eyes
much
waiting for you
your
to break.
being with us.
Stay
Because together,
don't
my
make a
friend.
mistake. We're watching.
Doctor for the night. To my friends, we shall pray again. Never expire. If you want to bring a friend, all right, we are clear. YouTube audience. Yeah, go ahead, Lee.
Everybody loves a good conspiracy. Come on. This thing can go in so many directions. It really gets your mind working. And it's almost like everybody's waiting on the next shoe to drop so they can try to draw a line to one of the conspiracies out there, right? So it's like waiting on bated breath.
Very true. Very true. Lee, I want you to stick around for just a minute. Our YouTube audience, we are going to say goodnight to you because I'm pretty worn out. It's been a long week after coming back from Vegas and working pin to pin for a number of days in a row here. Big thank you tonight to Area 53, me, our Mel WD40, Creepypasta, Richard, Adam, T-Bone ×2, Lavira ×2, Human Carl, Walter, and Blue Cruise. We greatly appreciate your love. Don't forget this weekend, we got the Sweets in the hot seat. So make sure you check them on out. I will be back on Monday night with Jim Goodall as my guest. Have a good one, everybody. Have a great weekend. Happy Mother's Day to all the great mothers out there. And if you're like me, where your mom is no longer there, send her a love and prayer up in heaven. Good night, everybody.
Stay healthy, my friend.
You too.
If you need bail money, give me a call.
Always, Dad. Take care.
You too.